Welcome to our deep dive into maximizing focus and productivity. Looks like deep work is a hot topic for you, this whole idea of really concentrating without distractions on those brain-heavy tasks.
Yeah, it's a timely one for sure. I mean, distractions are everywhere.
Tell me about it.
Learning to work deeply, well, that can be a total game changer, I think.
Absolutely. It feels like a constant battle against my inbox and, well, all the notifications. It's tough to focus on what really matters. You must feel that too, huh?
Definitely. It's like, one of the most fascinating things I found going through all this material was that research shows people can only resist distractions. Like, what is it, about half the time?
Wow, that's a little discouraging.
It is, it is. It really highlights why we got to have strategies to help us stay focused.
Okay, so we know distractions are a problem, and willpower alone isn't going to cut it. So what's the solution? I see this term scheduling philosophies in the source material. What are those all about?
Well, think of it this way. You wouldn't walk into a gym and just start lifting random weights.
Right.
You'd have some kind of plan, maybe a workout routine or something.
Oh.
So these scheduling philosophies, they're like workout routines for deep work. They give you a structure, a framework for how to actually integrate deep work into your life, in a way that's intentional and sustainable.
That makes sense. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these different philosophies.
All right, so there are four main ones that the material outlines. First, you've got the monastic approach. Basically, you try to eliminate or at least minimize all the shallow work.
Oh, wow.
And this approach, it works for people like Donald Knuth. He's that computer scientist who famously ditched email to focus on writing.
Right.
Or Neil Stephenson, the novelist. He's known for taking these long periods of deep work.
That sounds pretty intense, but also super effective. Is that realistic for most people, like for those of us who aren't reclusive geniuses?
Well, maybe not for everyone, true. But, the main idea is really valuable. Even if we can't completely eliminate all the shallow work, at least we can be more mindful about how much we let it take over our time, right?
Okay, yeah, so what about the next philosophy then?
Okay, the bimodal approach. This one's all about dedicating really specific stretches of time to deep work and then leaving the rest for, well, everything else. Like Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, he had this secluded retreat where he'd spend months working deeply and then come back to regular life.
Oh, interesting.
And even today, you see Adam Grant, the author and professor, using a similar approach, scheduling those blocks of deep work into his week.
Okay, so it's about strategically switching between really intense focus and then engaging with the world. That sounds a little more doable. What about the third one?
All right, number 3 is the rhythmic philosophy. So it's all about making deep work a regular habit. Just like brushing your teeth. Think about, what was his name? Jerry Seinfeld,
Oh, yeah, the comedian.
right? His chain method for writing jokes. He writes every day, no matter what, and marks his calendar to create a visual chain of all the days he's completed.
Oh, that's smart.
It's a visual reminder to keep the streak going.
I love that. I'm a very visual person, so that's something that I think would really work for me. What about the last one?
All right, last but not least, we have the journalistic philosophy. It gets its name from, journalists who need to be ready to write whenever a story breaks. It's all about fitting deep work in whenever you can. Like Walter Isaacson, he wrote his first book by stealing moments throughout his busy days.
Wow.
It takes some practice and confidence, but it can be surprisingly effective, especially for those with unpredictable schedules.
So we've got these four philosophies: monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic. And they each have their own approach to integrating deep work into our lives. What's the secret to choosing the right one?
The most important thing is to find the philosophy that really suits your own circumstances and goals.
Right.
There's no one size fits all. It's really about minimizing how much willpower you need to get into and stay in that state of unbroken concentration.
So it's not just about trying harder, it's about creating a structure that actually supports our deep work efforts.
You got it. And that leads us to another really important concept from all this material, the power of rituals.
Rituals. I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Think of them as signals to your brain that it's time to shift into deep work mode.
Yeah.
Lots of great minds throughout history have used them, like Robert Caro, the Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer.
Yeah, yeah.
He has these super strict rules for his office, no computers, no distractions, just the tools he needs to write. And then there's Charles Darwin, the famous naturalist. He had this structured daily schedule with specific times for walks and thinking.
So those little details, those little rituals, they can actually make a big difference.
Oh, they totally can. Because rituals help minimize decision fatigue, right? That frees up mental energy for the task at hand. So you don't have to constantly decide when and where to work deeply. You just follow the ritual and get started.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we create a good deep work ritual then? What are the key elements?
Well, the source material really focuses on three main areas: location, process, and support. First, location. You need to find a space that's conducive to focus. Could be your home office, a library, even a coffee shop, if you like a little background noise. The point is to minimize those distractions and create a sense of separation from the outside world.
Right. And what about process? What does that involve?
Okay, process is about establishing some rules, some procedures to keep your deep work sessions structured and productive. Maybe you ban all internet use during deep work, or you commit to working on one task for, say, 25 minutes before taking a break. Whatever works for you.
So it's about creating a clear framework for how you actually work deeply, not just hoping it'll happen on its own.
Exactly. And last, there's support, making sure your brain has the fuel and resources it needs to stay focused. This means things like, good coffee, healthy snacks, planned breaks to avoid mental fatigue, having all your materials organized and easy to grab.
So it's like you're treating deep work with the respect and intention it deserves, creating an environment that actually supports your focus instead of constantly fighting distractions.
You got it. It's all about recognizing that deep work is a valuable skill that takes practice. It's not something that just magically happens.
Okay, I'm with you. So we've talked about philosophies and rituals to make deep work a habit. What else is there to learn from the material you've gone through?
Well, sometimes you have to go big to go deep. The material calls these grand gestures.
Grand gestures. Okay, now that sounds interesting. Like a grand romantic gesture, but for deep work. I love it.
Kind of like that, yeah. It's about making a significant change to your environment or routine, like a signal to yourself that this work is important and you're committed to it. Think of J.K. Rowling. She finished the last Harry Potter book in a luxury hotel suite to get away from all the everyday distractions.
Wait, she did that. That's amazing.
Right. She understood how important it was to create a dedicated space for deep work. And then there's Bill Gates and his famous Think Weeks, right? He'd isolate himself to really ponder those big ideas. He knew that to focus on complex problems, he had to step away from the everyday grind and create space for deep thinking.
So it's like a deep work retreat for your mind. What other examples did you come across?
Well, there's this physicist and novelist, Alan Lightman. He spends his summers on a tiny island, no phone, no internet.
Wow, that's commitment.
Total disconnection. He believes that's how he can tap into a different level of creativity and focus.
Those are some serious commitments to deep work. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to have that level of focus? We need a real jolt to break free from our routine and really immerse ourselves in our work.
Totally agree. Now, obviously, not everyone can jet off to a private island. The key is to find something that feels significant to you, something that helps you shift your mindset.
So even dedicating a whole weekend to a project with no distractions, that could be considered a grand gesture, right?
Absolutely. Or, investing in some high-quality noise-canceling headphones just to create that sense of isolation in a noisy world.
Makes sense.
It's all about finding what works for you and consciously prioritizing deep work.
Love that. It's not about the size or cost of the gesture. It's about the intention behind it. We've covered so much already. Deep work versus shallow work, the willpower challenge, different scheduling philosophies, the power of rituals, and now these grand gestures. Is there anything else we need to know before we wrap up this part of the deep dive?
There is actually one more crucial aspect of deep work we haven't really touched on: collaboration.
Collaboration. Wait, isn't deep work all about individual focus and concentration?
That's what I thought too. But that's where it gets really interesting. This material, it challenges that assumption that deep work and collaboration are somehow opposites.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it starts by, debunking this myth that open offices are best for innovation.
Oh my gosh, yes. Open offices are the worst.
Right, all that noise and movement, it's impossible to really focus deeply.
I know, but haven't some companies like Facebook really embraced those open offices in the name of collaboration and those uh, what are they called? Those serendipitous
They
interactions?
have, yeah.
Yeah.
The material, it suggests that this approach might be based on a, uh, a misunderstanding of what really drives creative breakthroughs.
Okay, so what's the alternative? If open offices aren't the answer, how do we balance deep work with the need for collaboration?
Well, it's not about choosing one or the other. It's about finding the right balance, what the materials call the hub and spoke model.
Hub and spoke, like a wheel.
Exactly. Think of the hubs as those environments that facilitate interaction, exchanging ideas, conferences, meetings, brainstorming sessions. And the spokes, those are the quiet spaces where we retreat to process those ideas and do the actual deep work.
Right, so it's about strategically moving between these two environments to maximize both inspiration and concentration. So it's not about being a hermit or a social butterfly, but about recognizing that both individual focus and collaboration, they both play an important role in the creative process.
You said it. And here's another really fascinating insight from the materials. Even when we retreat to a spoke to work deeply, collaboration can still be a big help.
Really? How so?
Well, think about the invention of the transistor at Bell Labs.
Yeah.
It was a team effort, researchers working side by side, pushing each other to understand things more deeply.
That's incredible. So sometimes working with someone can actually enhance our deep work. I never thought about it that way.
It's a cool idea, right? The materials call this the whiteboard effect. Sometimes having another person there, whether physically or even virtually, can help us stay focused and overcome that natural urge to avoid going deep. It's like having a thought partner who challenges you to, you know, dig deeper and explore new ideas.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to deep work. I always saw it as this solitary pursuit, but it seems like collaboration can actually be a really important part of it.
It definitely can. And that brings us to the end of part one of our deep dive. We've learned that deep work is essential for producing valuable work in our distraction-filled world, and that we need to be strategic about how we schedule it, using philosophies and rituals to uh, minimize that willpower depletion and really maximize our focus. We shouldn't shy away from those grand gestures or collaboration when they can help enhance our deep work efforts.
This has been an awesome overview. I'm already feeling inspired to rethink my approach to work and try out some of these strategies. I'm eager to hear what else is in store for us in the next part of the deep dive.
I can't wait to share more with you.
See you then.
Welcome back to our deep dive into deep work. Looks like you're really into these powerful ideas for maximizing your focus and productivity.
I am. I feel so inspired by what we covered in part one, all about those scheduling philosophies, rituals, even the grand gestures. But there's this one idea that I keep thinking about, the idea of executing deep work like a business. It seems counterintuitive, but also super intriguing.
I know, right? It sounds a little strange at first, but using the same principles behind good business execution can really help you make deep work a consistent habit. One of the things the source material highlighted was this framework called 4DX, which was originally created to help businesses execute on their strategies.
4DX, so we're like channeling our inner CEOs to supercharge our focus.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
4DX focuses on four key disciplines, and the first one is all about figuring out what the material calls the wildly important.
Okay, I think I get that. It's about identifying what really matters and making that a priority.
Exactly. Instead of just, vaguely aiming to do more deep work, 4DX is all about getting really specific. Figure out those few ambitious goals that you want to tackle during your deep work time. That clarity, it helps boost your motivation and keep you on track.
So it's like having a clear target, something to aim for. What about the second discipline?
Okay, number two is focusing on what are called lead measures. These are the actions that you can take right now to influence those long-term goals.
Lead measures. Can you give me like a concrete example? I'm a visual learner, so sometimes I need to see it to really understand.
Sure. Imagine you're training for a marathon. The ultimate goal. That's like the lag measure, completing the race.
Right.
But just focusing on that final outcome, it's not enough to actually get you there. You need to break it down into steps you can take. Lead measures would be things like how many miles you're running each week, your pace, how consistently you're sticking to your training plan.
Okay, now I see the connection. So how do those lead measures apply to deep work then?
Well, think about it this way. The ultimate outcome of deep work might be, let's say, finishing a big project writing a certain number of words, or solving a complex problem.
Yeah.
But the lead measure, that's the time you actually spend in a state of deep work, totally focused on those goals.
Ah, I get it. So it's not just about the final product, it's about focusing on the process and making sure we're putting in the time.
Exactly. You shift your focus to the things you actually have control over the time you choose to spend working deeply.
That's a really helpful way to think about it. Okay, so what's the third discipline in this 40X thing?
This one's all about keeping what the materials call a compelling scoreboard. Humans are visual creatures, right? We're way more motivated when we can actually see our progress, especially when it's visual.
Kind of like those fitness trackers that show how many steps you've taken. I get super competitive with myself when I use mine.
Right. Visualizing your progress is incredibly motivating. For deep work, your scoreboard should track your total deep work hours. It could be as simple as like a tally on a piece of paper, a spreadsheet, or even an app.
Oh, yeah, I can see how that would be really helpful. It's a constant reminder that you're committed to this deep work thing, and seeing those hours add up would be super satisfying. Okay, what's the final discipline?
The fourth discipline is about creating a cadence of accountability. Now, in a business, this usually means regular team meetings to review progress. But since we're talking about individual deep work, it's more about holding yourself accountable.
So it's like a regular check-in with yourself. How would that actually work?
The materials suggest having those regular personal reviews, maybe weekly or even daily, just to reflect on your deep work. Look at your scoreboard, celebrate your wins, analyze any setbacks, and then make a plan for the week ahead.
It's like being your own deep work coach. This 40X framework is really making me rethink how I approach this. I tend to get lost in the day-to-day stuff and lose sight of the bigger picture.
That's super common. It happens to all of us, right? That's why having a system is so valuable. It helps you stay focused on your goals and make deep work a deliberate, conscious practice, not something that just happens by chance.
Okay, so we've covered these 4 powerful disciplines for executing deep work like a business. What else can we learn from all this material you've been going through?
Okay, so this might sound totally counterintuitive, but the final strategy for building a deep work habit is to be lazy.
Wait, what? Be lazy? I thought this was all about being more productive.
I know, right? It sounds kind of strange.
Yeah.
But when the source material talks about being lazy, it doesn't mean slacking off or avoiding your responsibilities. It's about recognizing that downtime is essential. It's how you recharge your mental batteries and let your subconscious mind work on those complex problems.
So it's more like strategic laziness, being really intentional about how we rest and recharge.
Exactly. Working smarter, not harder, right?
Okay.
The materials talk about this essayist, Tim Kreider, who retreats to an undisclosed location with no internet or TV to do his best writing.
Interesting. So he's deliberately disconnecting to create that space for deeper focus?
Exactly. He's found that by disconnecting from all the demands of modern life, he's actually able to tap into a different level of creativity and productivity. And his experience really highlights the importance of having a shutdown ritual at the end of your workday, to truly disconnect and let your mind release those work thoughts.
A shutdown ritual. Tell me more.
It's about creating a routine that signals to your brain that it's time to shift gears, from work mode to rest mode. This could include things like reviewing your to-do list, making a plan for the next day, clearing off your workspace, or even just having a specific phrase you say to mark that transition, like shutdown complete.
Shutdown complete. I like that. It's like a mental power button.
It may sound kind of silly, but those little rituals can be really powerful. They help you create that clear boundary between work time and downtime, which is so important for avoiding burnout and recharging your mental energy.
This makes me realize how often I just let work creep into my evenings. I'm always checking emails or thinking about those tasks I didn't get done. No wonder I'm always feeling drained.
It's so common in our always connected world. But that constant connection can really hurt your productivity over time. By embracing downtime and creating those boundaries between work and rest, you can actually improve the quality of your deep work and get better results.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value in this strategic laziness. It's not about being unproductive. It's about realizing that rest is a crucial part of that creative process. I'm on board with the shutdown ritual, but what about when my mind races with all those things I still need to do, even when I'm trying to relax? How do I convince my brain to just shut down and let go of all those work thoughts?
That's where understanding the science of downtime can really help. The source material actually presents some pretty compelling research that explains why disconnecting from work is so good for our focus and creativity.
Okay, I'm listening.
First of all, downtime helps with those aha moments, those insights. There's evidence that your unconscious mind can keep working on complex problems even when your conscious mind is at rest.
Oh, like when you suddenly figure out the solution to a problem while you're in the shower or taking a walk, it just pops into your head out of nowhere.
Exactly. One study found that people who were distracted after learning about different cars actually made better choices than those who consciously thought about it.
Wow, that's fascinating. So sometimes stepping away from a problem actually helps you find a better solution.
Yep. It's like giving your brain some space to breathe. It can make connections that it wouldn't have made if you were forcing it to focus. And what's really cool is that this isn't just anecdotal, there's actual research backing it up.
Okay, I'm sold on the power of distraction. What other benefits did the research mention?
Well, there's this theory called attention restoration theory. It suggests that being in nature can actually help you concentrate better.
Because nature is so calming and peaceful, it just quiets all that mental chatter.
That's definitely part of it. But there's more to it than that. The theory is that our brains use what's called directed attention to focus. And this is a limited resource. If we overuse it, we can't concentrate as well.
So it's like willpower or a muscle. It gets tired if we overuse it, and it needs time to recover.
Exactly. And nature provides that opportunity to rest because it's filled with what the theory calls inherently fascinating stimuli. Things like sunsets, trees, birdsong. They capture our attention without requiring us to actively focus.
Ah, so it gives our directed attention a chance to recharge while we're just passively taking in our surroundings. But I live in a city, so I don't always have easy access to nature. Are there other ways to get that same kind of mental restoration?
Of course. The main takeaway is that anything that provides those inherently fascinating stimuli can be restorative. So listening to music, reading a book, even just having a good conversation with a friend can help you recharge that directed attention.
So it's really about giving your brain a break from having to actively focus all the time?
That's the key. It's about switching from that directed attention to a more passive way of engaging. That's what allows your brain to recover and get ready for the next round of deep work.
Makes total sense. What was the third reason that the research gave for embracing downtime?
Okay, this one's more about using your energy wisely and being strategic with your work. The material argues that the work we tend to do in the evenings, after we've reached our peak deep work capacity for the day, is usually not that important.
So all those late night email checks and scrambling to finish things up, maybe they're not as productive as we think.
Probably not. We've got a limited capacity for deep work each day, right? By the evening, we're most likely past the point where we can keep working at that level.
So maybe it's better to leave those less important tasks for the next day when our minds are fresh.
Exactly. The research says it's better to just shut down for the day and come back to those things when you can really focus on them.
This is all making so much sense. But I have to admit, completely disconnecting from work still feels a little scary. Like, what if I forget something important? What if there's some urgent email that I miss? How do I deal with that anxiety?
That's where that shutdown ritual we were talking about comes in. It's not about just stopping abruptly. It's about taking those deliberate steps to make sure you've caught everything important and you have a plan for how to handle it later.
Right. You mentioned going over your to-do list and making a plan for the next day. What else could be part of that shutdown ritual?
It could be anything that helps you feel that sense of closure, that transition out of work mode. Some people do a quick email check just to make sure there's nothing urgent. Others like to clear their workspace and put away all their work stuff. It's about finding what works for you and personalizing it.
It's like tying up all the loose ends so your brain can relax, knowing that everything's taken care of.
But what about those unfinished tasks? The ones that just keep popping up in my mind even when I'm trying to unwind. How do I handle those? Yeah. The source material actually talks about that exact thing. There's a name for that phenomenon. It's called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect, what's that?
It's basically our tendency to remember unfinished tasks more than the ones we've completed. It's like those unfinished things get stuck in your head on repeat.
Oh, I definitely have that. It's like my brain won't let go until I finish those things. Is there anything you can do to overcome it?
Luckily, yes.
Yeah.
Research says that you don't actually have to finish the task to get it out of your head. You just need to make a plan for how you'll complete it later.
So by making a plan, we're basically saying to our brains, don't worry, we've got this covered. You can relax now.
That's the idea. You're outsourcing that mental burden to your to-do list or calendar, and that frees up your mental energy for resting and relaxing.
That's so reassuring. I already feel less anxious about disconnecting from work.
That's the power of understanding the science behind downtime. It helps you make smarter choices about how you manage your energy and attention.
This deep dive has been such a revelation. I've learned so much about the importance of deep work, all the different philosophies for scheduling it, the power of those little rituals, and the surprising benefits of being lazy.
And remember, it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about trying things out and finding what works for you.
Exactly. It's about creating a personalized deep work practice that fits your goals and your lifestyle.
So what stood out to you the most so far? Are you inspired to try a new scheduling philosophy or maybe create a deep work ritual that really works for you?
Honestly, I'm feeling inspired by all of it. But the shutdown ritual, that's going to be a game changer for me. I need to take back my evenings and give my brain the rest it needs. I feel so much more optimistic about actually making that happen now.
That's awesome. Remember, even those small changes can make a big difference in your productivity and creativity.
I can't wait to see what I can accomplish with all these new tools and insights. This has been such a valuable deep dive.
I'm so glad you're finding it helpful.
Yeah.
We'll pick up right where we left off in part 3.
Looking forward to it. I've always felt this pressure to be on all the time. Like I should always be working or learning, doing something productive even in my downtime. But after really going deep on this deep work stuff, I don't know, I'm starting to think that maybe that's not the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think it's a really common thing in our culture,
Yeah.
this idea that being busy is something to be proud of.
Right.
But like we've been talking about in this deep dive, to be truly productive, you got to be more deliberate with your energy and your attention. And sometimes that means taking a step back, embracing, I guess you could say, a little laziness.
Right, right. I'm definitely seeing the wisdom in that now. But I'm curious, are there any, I don't know, downsides to this deep work thing? Like, what if we get so focused on getting rid of distractions that we end up missing out on good opportunities or those, spontaneous interactions that can be so valuable?
That's a really good question. And it's something the source material actually talks about and
Yeah.
emphasizes that, dope work isn't about becoming a hermit or cutting yourself off from the world. It's more about choosing the right time and place to focus deeply and realizing that, well, different types of work need different approaches.
So it's all about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Deep work isn't like the answer to everything, but it's a really powerful tool to have.
Right, exactly. And just like any tool, you got to use it the right way and then not go overboard.
Okay, so it's not about turning into some kind of productivity machine.
No, not at all.
It's more about being thoughtful and deliberate in how we approach work. But I still have this one concern. What about those times when we have to work on something that's just, well, boring? Can we still use these deep work principles even when we're not feeling particularly inspired?
I think we all face that, right? Not every task is going to be super exciting. But the source material did offer a few ideas for how to deal with those uh, less than thrilling assignments. One thing they suggested was to try and connect the task to a bigger goal or purpose, something that you find meaningful.
Right. So even if the task itself isn't that interesting, if you can remind yourself why it matters, that can help boost your motivation.
Exactly. It's about changing your perspective, seeing that task as part of a bigger, more interesting story.
I like that. Any other strategies?
Another thing they suggested was to break down those big, intimidating tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic productivity tip, but it definitely applies here.
It does. Sometimes just getting started is the hardest part. Once you've made some progress, it's easier to, keep going.
Right, right. Anything else?
Let me see. Oh, they also talked about how important it is to create some kind of ritual or routine, even around those mundane tasks.
Oh, that's interesting. So even if the work itself is kind of boring, having a set process or a dedicated space to do it in, that can help your brain switch into focus mode.
Exactly. It's about creating a sense of, I don't know, predictability and structure, even when the work itself isn't all that exciting.
This whole deep dive has really given me a new way of looking at productivity and focus. I'm excited to start trying out some of these strategies and see what works best for me. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that, this deep work thing, it's a journey. It's not about being perfect right away. It's about making those small changes over time.
Right.
Be patient with yourself, experiment, and celebrate the wins along the way.
This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for, maximizing my focus and reaching my goals. I can't wait to put it all into practice.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, even small changes can have a big impact. Just imagine yourself a year from now, thinking about all you've accomplished because of deep work.
That's an inspiring thought. Thanks so much for guiding me through this deep dive. It's been really transformative.
It was my pleasure. Happy deep working.